Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast, where we elevate marketing leaders inside and out. I'm your host, Veronica Rami, master marketer, executive leader, and mentor to ambitious marketing leaders wanting to advance their careers. Each episode is filled with genuine, unscripted conversations with some of the world's top marketing experts, accomplished leaders, and industry trailblazers representing brands, both large and small. Our goal with this podcast and everything we do is to help you master your role, nurture your team, prioritize your well-being, and evolve into an industry-leading Rainmaker. This is the Rainmaker Podcast. Welcome back to the Rainmaker Podcast. I'm about to tell you our next two guests' first name, and it won't even register. So when I say Mike Chambers and Nicole Wingard, that might not be an immediate recognition of who they are, but when I tell you their story, if you're in marketing, you've heard it. Basically, do you remember Nicole, the intern on Instagram from The Best Marketing Strategy Ever? This young marketing professional who literally went viral, smashing the crap out of her company's cans to get attention. And really at the time was really to stick it to her boss, Mike, right? She was an intern wanting to get a permanent job. She didn't want to get fired. Like, it is wild. And they started this baby Instagram account literally overnight. And within 60 days, they hit 527,000 followers with zero paid advertising. Let me repeat. In less than 60 days, they hit 500,000 organic followers on Instagram with zero paid advertising budget. It's had 150 million plays, 250 million impressions, 500,000 website visits, 60,000 email signups, a 9x increase in company sales. And I think all in, when they started putting more like props and gimmicks and things like that, because it just took off, we're still talking less than maybe $35,000 all in on some of the more extreme content plays. But literally, they went viral for smashing cans to the point where they got the attention of Gary Vee. I'm obsessed with this story. I followed it. I'm sure a lot of us followed it. I begged them to be on the podcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, please, can I tell a story? I'm also, just between us, putting it in my new book called Identity Marketing, coming out in January 2025. And they were so generous. They were so kind. They both came on and they just spilled the beans. I asked all my really curious, intrusive questions, and they were really good sports. Here's the bummer, you guys. I just want to give you a heads up. It was both Nicole and Mike on the recording. Unfortunately, Nicole is literally traveling the country in a van trying to sell out the remaining branded cans of the company. And so her Wi-Fi was really spotty, and it didn't upload. So you're only going to hear the conversation between me and Mike, if I'm being honest. We're going to try to get Nicole to come back just to tell her version of the story. Either way, you're really actually going to love what Mike has to say. He's very transparent. We get into all the marketing ins and outs and nerd talk that only marketers do when we're hanging out. And you're probably going to love this podcast as much as I loved recording it. So without further ado, let's welcome Nicole the intern, Mike Chambers from Smashed. Hey, Mike. Hey, Nicole. Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast.
Thank you so much for having us, Veronica.
Okay, you guys, I'm slightly geeking out just because I feel like I know a lot about you. You probably know very little about me, but that's because I'm doing your story, hopefully justice, in my upcoming identity marketing book. I'm obsessed with what you guys have done and achieved with the internet went nuts for what you guys did, really in wild timing, right? It started in April, just barely April 2024, and you're well past 500,000 followers, which was the original goal.
Yeah.
So thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for willing for me to ask you all my curious questions.
For sure. And thank you so much for thinking of us and following along on the journey. It was definitely, you say April, man, we're recording August now. The last few months have been a total blur. I'm like, oh my God, where has the time gone? But yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, long summer, right? Okay, so before we get into the details of what happened, you guys were Mike and Nicole before you were what you are. What's happening between Nicole pleading her case to join the cause and really the inception, the genesis of this insane campaign? What happened?
Yeah, so Nicole joined, I guess, in November. It would have been in September of last year or August of last year. I had known Christina since 2017 through a mutual friend. My background originally, I was in the nonprofit space. I had co-founded two nonprofits, international education organizations, and then made the transition into sort of media and tech in around 2020. And I kind of had been helping Christina in an informal sort of marketing capacity
Hmm.
from kind of the fall of last year. And it wasn't until December of last year that I joined in kind of a more formal capacity as like a fractional CMO. She had just sort of launched the brand, and we were sort of tasked. Nicole was doing a couple different things at the time. She was an intern, very much so. She was helping us with content, but also she was helping us with customer service and like a couple other,
True
basically it was
intern.
like yeah, exactly a true intern. But we were sort of tasked early on with like coming up with a plan to compete in the non-alcohol in a very hot category against venture backed very big brands. And like one of the first things that I had started talking to Christina about early on was just the issue with the brand, and the issue with the name was it was really challenging, quite frankly, for people to pronounce. It was
Yes.
called mixology. It was meant to be a play on mixology, which is the art of making
Yep.
cocktails. But man, like we had people calling it like Mixoloche and Mixoloche, and it was just really hard for people to say. And that in and of itself was like a real problem for us. And we had identified it, but there had already been this so much work to we had just launched Walmart, and
Hmm.
we had
Hmm.
we had manufactured all this product, and like it was a rebrand at that time, was kind of out of the question. So Nicole and I just sort of started working. I have a lot of different accounts on Instagram that have done quite well, and just starting to take from like some of the lessons that I've learned from other accounts, and really just start testing into different concepts, right? Like,
Hmm.
Nicole and I were coming up with just various ideas. And I think of like organic social really is like, every time you post something, you have the chance to reach a tremendous amount of
Sure.
people. And like, that's kind of unique. It never really used to be that way. Like your content would only get to go in front of the people who followed you. But
Hmm.
now if you post something and it makes the algorithm happy, you can really get tremendous reach. So we started testing a bunch of different concepts, and we had some traction. We grew the main mixology page to around 75,000 followers in a very short period of time. But we never really had like our main theme.
Hmm.
And the brand, like again, like we sell non-alcoholic cocktails. The whole sort of theme, the whole sort of like main value prop of the brand is that like they're designed to taste like the real thing. Like it's so
Hmm.
good you think they're real. They are really a unique product in the market, where a lot of like non-alcoholic cocktail companies, they're sort of like juice based, or they're like a seltzer. Ours are really designed to like taste like the thing that you're giving up, the old fashioned, the mojito, the mule. So we had like a really strong product, but we needed to like kind of figure out our positioning, and
Hmm.
so that was like kind of how it all started. It was really just a lot of like test and learn with Nicole and I. And then, I mean, really, it's funny because from the outside, a lot of people are like, "Oh my God!" Like they had this whole thing planned all along, and like, I mean, the truth is, like, it really all kind of unfolded very organically. It was
Hmm.
a conversation with Nicole and I where I had been doing research on various accounts, and I'd come across this account called Monkey Marketing, and they were one of the original like challenge based, you
Yeah, we have
know,
60 days to
yeah,
do
yeah,
this.
exactly. So
Hmm.
his whole thing was he was the first, and his whole thing was, I have X number of days to prove to my marketing professor
Hmm. Hmm.
that like this picture of a monkey is like more impactful than anything he'll teach me or something.
Okay, great.
And I was like, whoa, this is like really fun. I mean, he would post the same picture every day, and like it was just a funny like GameStop moment where people could just rally behind something silly and have fun
Sure.
with it, right? And I was like, all right, this is really cool. But the problem with it is like he wasn't actually marketing anything. So I was like, okay, this is a really interesting format. and we kept kind of kicking the tires around different ideas. And then one day I was just like, Nicole, like maybe just go in the backyard with a baseball bat and
Smash
smash
the
the
hell out of this can. Okay.
And I just remember the conversation. She was like, yeah, okay, we can try it. Like, she's always down. And Nicole's amazing. Like, she's so creative and like down for everything, which is so great. And we did, she went in the backyard and filmed a video of herself like on a tripod, with a baseball bat and a
Yeah.
can, and she smashed the can and posted it, and maybe she got a couple hundred followers. Next day she did it again. I was like, the whole idea is we're going to do this every day for 60 days. Here's the overlay, here's the caption. And she did it again the second day, couple hundred views. Third day she ends up getting like 30 million views.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment where we were like, all right, we've got a real opportunity here.
Okay, hold on. I have so many questions.
Yeah.
By the way, I've gone down the rabbit hole. I've actually looked at every single post and I've seen most of the comments and I have the receipts. So there was one that I found, senior photo. He's like, I'm a fan of what's going on here, but you have got to be the least coordinated person at that company. I thought that was pretty fun because I did see that. I saw that there was questions around the sincerity or the authenticity of how this just came to be. But like, if you look at some of those really early posts, like it's pretty like junior, like there's no production
Totally.
value of
No.
any kind. And I think that's what's probably so endearing. Like here you have this one, young, beautiful woman who's like smashing this can. What the hell's happening? Like I think the curiosity, the unconventionalism, I think the novelty, the dopamine that's happening when you're watching this kind of content, I think too. Also, like I was drawn to it. But I have so many questions because my immediate thing was like, who the hell approved this? Because if I'm the owner of this new company that's trying desperately to disrupt one of the most saturated market categories possible and be taken seriously, who the hell approved an intern smashing my beautiful can that spent, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how'd that happen first? Like,
So, well, the one thing about Christina is she's amazingly supportive of all the crazy
okay.
ideas that we come up with. So Christina is the owner. She is the primary investor. There are other investors. And, I think the idea of this being, to everything that you just described, like we knew it had all of the elements of like,
Right.
kind of like a train wreck. Like you can't really turn away. Like there's the payoff of the can being
The payoff,
smashed.
yes.
There's the weirdness of like how she's going to smash the can or
Yes.
why she's smashing cans.
Yes.
Then there's this like interesting, like, wait a minute, she's got this many days to prove to her boss. And she's like some really confident intern who's like really, putting herself out there. There was all these just like fun kind of elements that I think ultimately, just worked well. But yeah, I think, it was pitched to Christina as let's try it out and see how it goes. And she was like, all right. I mean, and the truth was, we had some inventory that had been manufactured a year prior in the name of selling it to some retailers. So we had some inventory that was actually set to expire.
Cool.
And we were either going to throw it away or we were going to do something with it. Right. So.
Well, I mean, like a very quick moral of this story is you have a very open-minded Christina, aka owner of company. You have an open-minded intern who's just game to do it. Like, wow, the amount of bandwidth that you guys had just to be creative, I think is something that a lot of marketers envy, to be honest. Like if we had that bandwidth, if we had that affordability just to like let our creative juices flow, or like what Ted Lasso says, like don't bring an umbrella to the brainstorm, like just to dream. Hey Rainmakers, it's Veronica, and we'll get back to today's episode, but before that I have an exciting invitation for all of you aspiring ambitious marketing leaders. If you are serious about advancing your career in marketing and you're looking for an expert to give you some personal insights, guidance, tips, then I'm going to invite you to schedule a free Pathway to Promotion call with me. This is a special one-on-one call with just you and me to discuss your current roadblocks in your career, your long-term aspirations and ambition, and the next best step for you and your personal promotion. Head to pathwaycall.com or click the link in my show notes to schedule your free Pathway to Promotion call. Now back to today's episode. Speaking of payoff, Mike, I had to tell you this. One of my favorite marketing keynote speakers of all time, his name is Andrew Davis. If you've ever seen him on the circuit, he's phenomenal. And one of his keynotes was called The Curiosity Factor. And he specifically talked about the payoff. And he mentioned one of my favorite stories is this viral moment where I can't even remember the creator, but like some content creator was trying to determine how many rubber bands it took to explode a watermelon. So they just
Yep.
kept on putting rubber
I've
band
seen
after rubber
those.
band in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
middle. And the comments were like, I've missed car pickup. My kids have been waiting for 45 minutes, but I
Yeah.
can't peel
Yeah.
my eyes. I gotta know like
Brilliant.
how many. And so I think there's something really, really intoxicating about having closure. Like we have to know what happens. There has to
Yeah.
be some level of fulfillment to an open loop. We have to close a loop mentally. If not, it like really
Totally.
unsettles us. And so I think the fact that you were wise enough to like, one, you saw it in a different creator's account, then you made the translation to what it could infer or mean for the business. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, we don't know if it will ever work until you try.
Yeah.
But like the fact that you were able to translate from one into this, I think obviously amazing. You could never have foreseen the immediacy of how quickly it took off. Like I was going literally in the receipts, in the screenshots of some of these comments, like you guys were not even what I saw the Smash Army pop up only 40 something days. Yeah, 45 days ago. And it was the first time I saw Nicole say, okay, hashtag Smash Army. If I send you some cans, how will you smash them? It was the first time I saw you guys acknowledge Smash Army. So
Yep.
I have to ask, this is really important to me in like the research of the book too. Was the sub identity of the audience developed by the audience, or did you call them that? Who said
We
it
called them that.
first?
We called
You
them
called
that.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was actually largely inspired by, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the content that comes from this media company, but they've been wildly successful, Barstool Sports. And in
Mm-hmm.
the early days, I actually grew up in Massachusetts, and I remember in the early days, Barstool Sports was literally a newspaper in Cambridge and in Alston. And early on, you can say what you want about Dave Portnoy, but he's a marketing genius. And early on, he referred to his community as the Stoolies, and he referred to them that, and they took on this identity as the Stoolies, and that's since that's been 20 years now of the Stoolies, and I knew kind of early on that we needed to give this community
Yeah.
some sort of something
Yeah.
to rally behind, a name, and the Smash Army came very organically because Nicole had an army helmet that she wore in one of the skits, and there was just a really funny photo that we got, a candid. She would do the videos, and then we would get some candid like photos that we could do the sort of VO army sort of announcements to the community. And it was this really funny photo that I love. It's the most iconic photo of the campaign, of just her with a really funny goofy face with the helmet on, and it just fit really well. And then they really very much so took it on as part of the
Yeah.
community's identity, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I'll say to your question earlier too, like, I think, for brands, it used to be that like you really needed to have your social polished, and you needed to be really
Sure.
careful who was going to be the face of your
Sure.
brand. And I don't think that's the case anymore. Like to my point at the onset, like, every time you post something, you have a chance to go viral, and having people who are a part of your having people who are committed to your brand to a certain extent. I understand your point there, but like having various people who can represent and be the face, people connect with people more
Mm-hmm.
so than product. and
Yeah.
and the other thing is, like, we decided very early on that we knew this was a risk because it was kind of crazy, and we knew we had an established brand page, so we actually made the conscious decision to create a brand new account. And this was a
Okay.
brand new account that we started from zero, the best marketing strategy ever, as opposed to doing this on the brand page. And that's honestly a tactic that I think a lot of brands should employ in terms of just like testing things without having an impact on the main brand page, because it doesn't even have to necessarily be specifically about the brand to benefit the brand, but it allows you to really kind of play in the sandbox a little bit with some of your creative and your content without looking kind of unhinged on your own, on your own brand page.
I know it's like and that's the thing too. It's like if you're too polished, it's insincere. if you're too unhinged or concerned for your
Right. What's
well-being.
happening? Yeah,
Like, so it's like a really fine line of like controlled crazy to some
totally.
degree. But okay, we have to talk about the villain.
Totally.
We have to. This is one of my favorite parts as I'm like, again, just doing my research, just, stalking the two of you. That's all I do, right? Is like the intentionality of the brand new account, the intentionality of like, saying, hey, Smash Army. But again, whether you called them Smash Army, Squad, I don't care. They have to own it, right? It
Yeah.
has to be endorsed by both sides, not just one. Because I have countless brand examples where they've tried to append like an identity that was
Yeah.
like
It
a
doesn't go.
total
Yeah.
flop, right?
Yeah.
So it has to take. But in some of the early comments, like there's one, gosh, I can't, SFL House Hermit said, this is like 42 days in, who's here just because they want someone's boss to be wrong? This was an ongoing thing. And so, Mike, you're the jerk, right? Like you're
Yep.
the villain of this narrative. You're the boss that like we want to prove incorrectly. And how many Mikes do you represent for
I
us?
know. Of
Like
course.
workplace trauma.
Yeah. Of course.
Was this also intentional to villainize you?
Very much so.
Okay.
It
Okay.
was
Had
really,
to be, right?
it was really challenging. So, so when the first post went viral, we kind of all came together and we were like, look, like this is a tremendous opportunity. If we storyline this out really properly, like we could
Right.
do something super special here. Like
Okay.
it was a kind of catching lightning in a bottle moment.
Yes,
It was a very
100%.
simple format. It was like we could come up with all sorts of fun ideas for how to build on it. But I was worried that the can smashing alone without this underlying real crusade or conflict wasn't going to be enough to
Got
get
to raise the
people.
stakes of the story.
Yeah. So we started to play into it.
Hmm.
And, I think we've all had experiences with unsupportive bosses. We've all had people who maybe haven't believed in us or people who haven't empowered us.
Of
It's a
course.
very universal thing that, and so, we towed the line with that and we sort of leaned into it. Like, of course, like I would intentionally not call them the Smash Army.
I had that on my notes.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
literally
yeah,
said, funny to me that Boss Mike never got the identity right. Smash Squad, Smash Military Group,
yeah.
or whatever.
So there were a lot of engagement baits and there were a lot of like,
I
and
picked
look, like,
it.
I think a significant percentage of the community kind of knew that this was all fun. But then we were also surprised in the end by how many people, kind of actually bought into the whole story.
Of course, yeah.
But like the whole theme behind this was, intern trying to prove her boss
Yep.
wrong. If she
Yep.
gets it right, she gets a job and gets to rebrand. There's a
Yep.
villain, unsupportive boss. But basically a storyline to a certain extent. Like she was really indeed an intern. This really did happen organically. We didn't decide to rebrand until we got traction. Once we got traction, we did file for the trademarks on a name that we thought the community, like, it was really challenging. If we could have done it our way, we would have
Hmm.
100% had the community like be a major part of like leading the rebrand in that like
Hmm.
they get to choose the name. But unfortunately, like trademark law is the way it is. And like
Yeah.
if they landed on a name that like we couldn't have protected, it would
Or
have
someone took it
what
from you.
or some yeah, it would have been worse. So
Yeah.
we chose a name that we thought best represented the campaign, the future of the brand, where we wanted to go with things, and that they would be excited about. And then we sort of crafted the storyline to get them there and to
Hmm.
get the community there. But that like the rebrand was a conversation, but not planned until we actually started to get traction.
So can I just ask really, I just want to make sure I understand the storyline. Because again, the rebrand from Mix it's
Yeah, yeah,
She Shed. I don't know. Like, so
yeah,
I
yeah,
get
yeah,
it.
yeah.
To Smashed was smashed on the idea board before Smash
No,
Army, before the smashing of the very first can.
no,
Okay.
no, it
So,
wasn't.
okay.
No, it really was. It
Okay.
was. It was born from the campaign, and
Cool.
it was a
Okay.
name that we were super excited about that had never come to us when we had discussed the rebrand
Cool.
prior. Yeah,
Cool. Okay. That's what I was hearing, but I just wanted to make sure that I heard it exactly as you meant it. So, okay. I know it's going crazy. People are seeing it. People are sharing it. You can see in the comments, like, who's coming back every day just to see, like, this is like, the rubber band around the,
totally.
the watermelon. Like they're coming. It's like a show. It's your Shark Week for sure. Then freaking Gary Vee enters the conversation. Can we talk about how the hell did Gary Vee enter the Is because someone's cousin is Gary Vee? Like, how did this happen?
No. Let's be clear. He reached out and said, "I'm sorry you have an unsupported boss, but if you ever want to come work at VaynerMedia, there's a job for you here."
This gets so much better.
Yeah.
That's so cool, and I love how Mike like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Let's make sure we
No,
be authentic to what really happened. He
no, I
tried to
gave Nick
poach
a hard
you.
time. I gave Nick a hard time about that when we ended up meeting him because
So
he was, yeah.
he like fell into your villain narrative too.
Oh, totally. But he then actually knew by the time he had
Sure,
invited us
sure,
out.
sure.
But yeah, I mean, it was amazing. Like Nick and Gary's team, they found us right away. I
Yeah,
mean, they found us within, a couple days of launching that
amazing.
campaign. And before she had any traction, she got a reach out from Nick, and we were like, yeah, I'm not going to leave, but if you want to, if we'd love to have Gary smash a can. And we kept kind of pestering him. And then Gary mentioned it on a podcast where he was like,
Mm-hmm.
there's some
Mm-hmm.
intern like smashing a can. And then we
Mm-hmm.
used that
I
clip
saw that clip.
to get the community fired up, to put
Yeah,
more pressure on Nick. And then eventually, once we had traction, Nick was like, all right, we're doing this. And
yeah.
we went out, and they were incredibly, we went out to their office in New York, and they were amazing. It was a cool experience for sure.
I mean, there's just moments in I think your marketing career where if you're aware enough, I think it's pretty obvious that you guys were aware that you were catching lightning in a bottle. It didn't pass you. You're like, oh my gosh, it's happening, and I'm aware that it's happening. I think too many times if I reflect in my 17 years as a marketer, I'm like, damn, I really wish I was more present in this moment of success or a validation or a marker of something, some
Totally.
milestone. But oftentimes we like run right through it. We're like, oh shit, that really did happen. That was like, I should have celebrated that a little bit more. But you're so in the trenches of what you're doing and you're just trying to like, survive sometimes. So I just think when I saw that play out for you guys, I was like, I think marketer to marketer, I was like, yes,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
was so
Yeah. Yeah.
happy
Yeah.
for you guys.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like this is a lot of work. And yeah, it's the payoff of payoffs, right? So here's, I have so many questions, but I just, yeah. I'm obsessed. I'm so excited for you guys. I think for me too, it's like with the wild success of this original campaign, then again, maybe this is my marketerness, but I started getting anxious for you because I'm like, well, what the hell is going to happen
Yeah. Totally.
day -1? Like what happens when we get to the 60, we've achieved the goal, the cause is fulfilled. How do you continue how do you keep milking this
Yeah.
beyond the original scope of the story? And I felt anxiety for you from a marketing standpoint. I was like trying to solve it for you. So could you take me into those conversations to the degree that you feel comfortable?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to. And I can tell you, as much as you were feeling anxiety about it, so was I. And so was Nicole. There was a lot going on. We're a small company.
Yes.
We're a small startup. We're definitely
Yes.
punching above our weight in a big
Yes.
way. And rebranding at such an early stage for a small company is a huge deal. So there was a lot going on behind the scenes that we needed to try and figure out how we were going to manufacture all this new product. And we had all these retail partners that we had to add. So there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. And then also Nicole was in the middle of preparing for Miss Texas. She was a
Hmm.
finalist in the Miss Texas competition. And, so she was away, at the end of this. So there was a lot of stress of like, okay, once this campaign's over, kind of how we're going to figure it out. And we had tested a couple things. Like we had several ideas how we were going to follow this up. Like first thing
Hmm.
was we knew that we needed to do something with our retail partners to drive the Smash Army out to stores, because they had given us this ultimatum that we had to hit a certain velocity of selling our
Jeez.
old product in order to get the new product on shelves. So we
Jeez.
knew that we were going to have Nicole be like doing in-store activations around the country.
Okay.
And the initial idea was we were going to continue with the can smashing. We didn't really want to move the goalpost. Like we didn't really want to continue the villain narrative. Like we felt like that had like reached a nice conclusion. It was a really good ending. And like we felt like continuing it was going to just ruin
Hmm.
it, quite
Dilute it.
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we probably could have, we talked to Gary and Nick about this, and they're like, you could probably milk this to like 1 million. And like, we thought about it, but so we had tried, like, we had a couple different ideas, and we wanted to do this like really fun political, non-political,
I
but like
saw.
campaign, presidential, run Nicole for president. And we felt like it was going to be kind of a moment of like a breath of fresh air in a really, really unfortunate political climate.
Contentious,
Yeah,
yes.
it's like obviously, it's been a really tough time for the country, and like we always saw this as like an opportunity to just for people to just laugh, and like it was never going to get political in any way, shape, or form. Just super fun.
Yeah.
And when we leaned into it, like I think people were, I think we really, I'll take responsibility for this. Like really misjudged how upset people are about this situation and how like they don't even
It's
really,
personal.
yeah, it's personal. They don't even really want to laugh about it. So in the name of like, because we're a startup and because we can fail fast, like we just took it on the head and just said, look, like we're going to kind of drop the shtick with this whole thing. And we're going to just do a more of a build in public following Nicole's journey of like working to sell out Sprouts and Walmart nationwide. And that really is in greater service of the business goals right now than focusing on followers or anything else. Like we really need to make sure that we do this so we can get smashed back on
Mhm.
shelves. So that's kind of what we're doing now. And we have some fun stuff kind of coming up, but there's a lot of things like do we keep it, do we change the handle to the main brand page, do we keep it a
Yeah.
creator page, do we bring in other creators, like there's a lot of conversations. And the truth is, like, just like we were building the plane while we were flying it with the
Mm-hmm.
campaign, like we're still figuring it out. And
Fair.
what I think what was really important for us was for those who felt like, oh, kind of hoodwinked at the end of it with the so good you think it's real thing. Like we wanted to build back, like we wanted to, like, we knew like whatever we did next, like we didn't want to like
I
have
hear you.
a shtick behind. Like we knew it was going to be a little more real. But some of the ideas that we have kind of moving forward, at the end of the day, like the brand really represents, like we want to prove to people that you can have fun without drinking. Like you don't need alcohol to have a great time.
100.
And so that is kind of like we're going to go really unhinged, really fun on the content side. And I think people are going to like what we're working on.
Well, I mean, you have the handle for it. Best marketing
Exactly.
strategy ever. So, like, I mean, you have to live up to the handle itself.
We do.
All of us are marketers. I don't care if you're a mother trying to convince the PTA to do something, or you're trying to get your kid to eat his dinner. Like, we are all in the ethical persuasion of getting people to do something, and that to me is marketing. And so I just have to thank both of you profoundly, profusely. Like, thank you for coming on this podcast and sharing this story. I promise I will do as much justice to it. In fact, I'll even give you a little teaser. The chapter that you're in, it's in part 2, so our section 2 of the book, called The Undeniable Power of Identity Marketing. And you are it could be 8, it could be 5, I'll switch it up, but it's called Disrupting Saturated Markets with Cause, featuring
Awesome.
Smashed.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
So I'm pumped. I'm really pumped. I'll give you the chapter as soon as we finish writing it in its raw form. But thank you both for being on today's podcast.
Thank you so much for having us, Veronica.
Thank you for joining us on today's Rainmaker podcast. Marketers help other marketers. So if there's a marketer in your life who could really use a new perspective in a way that helps them advance their career, please pass this episode forward, share, leave us a review. Everything helps as we embark on helping as many marketers elevate themselves inside and out. You can always visit veronicarami.com for today's show notes, additional links to some free resources and tools for you to help you advance your career. You can always connect with us on social media at VRami if you want more behind the scenes or a way for us to connect personally. Until next time, my friends, make it rain.